Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for The Walking Dead Season 5, Episode 5, Self-Help. And that was the perfect title for this episode because this episode was very dramatic, very sad, definitely. And definitely whoever plays Abraham, best performance on the show so far. By far his best performance. We really found out a lot more about Abraham. We found out more about Eugene. We found out more especially about these three new characters who I like they did this because Abraham, Eugene, and Rosita were introduced in the beginning of last season and we didn't really know too much about them, and finally we found out a lot more about them, and I definitely really enjoyed that. And, I definitely loved this episode. Thought it was absolutely fantastic. I definitely enjoyed it more than last week's. I did really enjoy last week's, but this one was so much better, and I just loved it. So let's just get to it. So we see Abraham driving down the road in the church bus. They're all going to Washington, and Rosita is teasing Abraham about how his hair is getting long, and Abraham jokes he thinks he's becoming a plumber, and Rosita says he'll cut Abraham's hair later that night. And Tara tells Eugene that his hair is getting a little long in the back and suggests he cut it. And she jokes, "Oh, is it your source of power?" And Eugene responds that he's not saying a lie anytime soon. She asks Eugene what's up. He says he's thinking about what that preacher did. And Maggie tells Glenn that maybe Daryl and Carol came back and the rest of them are right behind them. And Maggie turns around and asks Eugene how long it will take once he gets on the terminal and does what he needs to do. And Eugene says it depends on the density of the unaffected around target sites worldwide. And after Eugene rattles off some more scientific mumbo-jumbo, Glenn asks Eugene why the hair, and Eugene says because he likes it, and he adds no one is taking scissor or clipper to it any time. And Eugene said that the smartest man he ever knew was his old boss, T. Brooks Ellis, the director of the Human Genome Project, loved his hair. And the bus passes by a group of walkers, and the engine suddenly blows out. The bus swerves, flips over onside. Walkers start to approach the motionless bus, and I'm going to say that I knew this was going to happen. I pretty much knew that because of the fact, I knew this was pretty much going to happen because of the fact that I knew that when they would go to Washington that this is not going to work out. Because one, Eugene is very, he did this very suddenly. He suddenly decided to do this. This was his decision. Yes, it was. But it was a very sudden decision. And, Abraham is not the most, he doesn't think out things very well. He's not as smart as Rick is. He's a good leader, but this episode really shows that Rick really is a better leader than Abraham. That's really what this episode shows. So we go to a flashback, which I definitely really enjoyed. We saw a lot of flashbacks with Abraham in this episode, which I really enjoyed, and I always love when the show does flashbacks. They do them very rarely, but they do them very, very well, especially like what they did with Michonne last year, and they're doing it this year with Abraham. So we see in a flashback, someone is beating a man to death with a can. The camera pans out, and it's Abraham doing the beating. Abraham stands up, steps on the throat of the beaten man, killing him. The camera pans out again to reveal they are in a grocery store, and there are several other bodies on the floor. He turns around and calls out the other name, Ellen. So back onto the flip bus, Abraham is calling out for Eugene, and everyone on the bus is starting to regain their composure from the crash because the engine is on fire. So Abraham, Glenn, Maggie, and Rosita bust out the back door of the bus to fight off the walkers. Tara stays on the bus to make sure Eugene's okay. And a walker tries to get in through a bus window. Tara stabs it, tells Eugene it's time to be brave. She gives Eugene a knife, and they both leave the bus to help, which makes sense why she gave him a knife, because, of course, Eugene really hasn't really killed many walkers. He hasn't really done anything that intense, because he is a scientist. He's not really... And again, the only reason we think he was with the group is because he knows what happened with the cure, and knows how the whole zombie outbreak happened, the walker outbreak. So that's why we pretty much think he's there in the first place, and Tara tells him, look, it's time to be brave. So they both leave the bus to help, and at first Eugene's just a little petrified. He stands, and you don't know what he's going to do. So, however, he sees a walker coming up behind Tara. He rushes over to stab it to save her, and I really like this bonding between Tara and Eugene, definitely. And after all the walkers have been dispatched, Abraham barks out an order to check Eugene to see if he's hurt. Eugene says he's fine, but he notices blood on Abraham's hand and asks if it's blood. And Abraham says, yes, that is cut, just reopen again. And before they can head into the bus to retrieve their supplies, the bus bursts into flames, and they can't get back to the bus because it's gone. So Eugene is suggesting that they head back to the church, but Abraham insists that they have to continue on the mission, basically because, they have to get to Washington. That's what they have to do. So Abraham says retreat means they lose, but they don't go back, and Glenn says they're going with him, that he's calling this thing, but he just needs to know that Abraham is good. And Glenn's pretty much the rational person here. I mean, if you think about it, out of all the people here, Glenn's the most rational. He just needs to know that Abraham's good, and Abraham says he took a pretty good hit with the crash, but as long as they're rolling on, he's good. And, Glenn says we're rolling on, and Tara suggests that maybe they can find some bikes, because bikes down burn. And Eugene goes and looks at the walker he stabbed, and he spits on it, and Abraham and the group continue their journey on foot. So then basically what happens is that we see another flashback scene. Abraham is in the grocery store, he's yelling out for Ellen, and he stumbles down the aisles until he finds the woman, who is Ellen, and two kids, and we basically find out why this was so affected by him, because, he obviously killed this woman, we don't know who it was, and we find out who it is. We find out this woman, Ellen, and two kids are crouched down behind a counter, and that was definitely very well done in my opinion. I really enjoyed that. So back in the present, Abraham and the group are breaking into a bookstore, and once inside, they start setting up shop by getting water from the toilet, building a barricade with bookshelves, and tearing out book pages to use in a fire. And Rosita uses some string from a book spine to sew up the gash in Abraham's hand. And after Rosita finishes patching him up, Abraham says that he's going to take a sweep, and Glenn finds Abraham watching walkers outside the door, and Abraham thanks Glenn for coming with him, and Glenn asks Abraham if he's going to wrap up his hand, but Abraham says he's going to let it get some air, that he cut it pretty bad back at the church. He wants that hand to be okay and everything. So he says kind of reached the point where everyone alive is strong now. And he says he wants to say it's never easy to kill someone, but it's not the truth. That it's the easiest thing in the world now. And that really does make sense if you think about it. I mean, think about it. Nowadays, since there's no, apocalypse or anything, if you kill someone, it's very hard to do that. But in their world, there aren't many morals. There are many, walkers to kill. So killing someone is a normal thing, really, in their world. So I definitely enjoyed that line a lot. I thought that was definitely really good. So Glenn tells Abraham that he should turn in and get some rest, but Abraham says he really needs some ass first, he calls it. So after Abraham needs, Glenn says he didn't know that, but cool. He's like, I didn't know that, but cool. And Abraham and Rosita are having sex, and that was really weird. I didn't expect them to be in a relationship like that. That was definitely very strange. I mean, they did say sexual situations, and apparently this episode was actually almost censored because of that. Almost was banned from airing because of, the censors or something like that. Some shit like that. I don't know what's going on there, but I thought that was really weird what happened, definitely. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, okay, I guess they're just randomly gonna have sex now. I guess that kind of made sense, but I didn't really know what to think of that. So basically, Abraham laughs and says, don't worry, that he's harmless, and that was really weird. So, Tara comes up behind Eugene. Eugene admits to watching Abraham and Rosita. That's really weird. And Eugene says he enjoys the female form, and he considers it to be a victimless crime, which provides a distraction. And Tara says that she was looking for Eugene to thank him for saving her life back at the bus. And we find out something big about Eugene. I actually really like this twist. I thought this was really cool. He actually reveals that he sabotaged the bus to make it crash. And he says that he put crushed glass in the fuel line back at the church, and that the vehicle should have failed before it even got to the road. And Tara asks why he did that. Eugene says that he couldn't survive on his own. He just couldn't. He didn't want to survive on his own. And he says that if he couldn't save the world, that there is no way they would keep him around. So Tara says that they would because they're friends. And Tara says that Eugene needs to keep secret what he did and not to do it again. So I definitely agree that Tara is saying that he needs to keep that secret and everything, and I thought that was definitely very good. And then we get a very touching scene between Glenn and Maggie, which I definitely really enjoy their touching scenes. I mean, if we want to talk about the best couple on the show, it's Glenn and Maggie. I mean, come on. They are the power couple of the show. They are the couple that you rooted for. Last year, of course, we wanted them to get back together so much, and now they're back together. It's great that they're having these scenes. And even though the group is separated right now, at least Glenn and Maggie are together. They're not separated. So Glenn is sleeping next to Maggie, and Maggie's staring up into space, and Glenn asks if she's thinking about them, and Maggie says she feels guilty. Glenn jokes around about having a vacation on a bookstore floor, and Maggie says it's just good having this because it's not about what it's about, it's about what it's going to be. So I thought that was a very good line. So we go to another flashback, and Abraham tells Ellen and the kids that they are safe now that he stopped them, and Ellen is shaking, and the kids are hiding behind her, and Abraham looks down his blood-covered hands and tells them that it's okay. And that was definitely very crazy. That was definitely a very interesting flashback. So Rosita is wrapping up Abraham's hand in bandages, and Rosita says that she thinks that they should stay here today, but Abraham says they need to keep moving, and he says every minute that they waste in getting Eugene to Washington, people are dying. And Maggie says that this store was hardly touched, that they could spend one more day searching for supplies, and Rosita says they will sweep as they go. And he says that they have a vehicle, and he looks at the window at a fire truck, and he adds that the vehicle has 500 gallons of water on it. And at first the fire truck won't crank, but Abraham eventually gets it started. However, after they pull out, the fire truck chokes down, and as Abraham starts to work on the fire truck, a tire goes rolling by, and then a whole bunch of walkers come out of the building. They're overrun, but Eugene turns the fire hose on the walkers and takes them out. Abraham says he's been to 8 country fairs and 1 goat rodeo, and he's never seen anything like that. I mean, I thought that was a great line, definitely. He said that. It's like, I've been to 8 country fairs and 1 goat rodeo, and I've never seen anything like that. I thought that was just a really funny line. But that was definitely very crazy. I mean, that was probably one of the most random walker attack we've ever had. I mean, what I do like, though, is that, last season we got a lot of those random walker scenes where just walkers would randomly appear, and that's not what's going on here. What's going on here is that it's not that necessarily that walkers are randomly just appearing out of nowhere. It's that basically just the walkers are there because there's still the threat of the walkers. So Glenn then says that there's a Goodwill where they might be some supplies because, of course, they're trying to find supplies here because, of course, all their supplies was on the bus, but the bus burned down, so they're basically screwed there. But Abraham's against waiting. He doesn't want to wait, and that's a thing that seems to be a thing with Abraham we've seen for the whole show, pretty much, since we've seen his character. He didn't want to wait to get to Washington, and now he doesn't wait for the supplies. So I don't understand why he doesn't want to wait here. And he climbs on the roof of the fire truck to clean out the intake of the engine, and he starts laughing when he sees red on the ground, sick inside, let them die. So we go to another flashback, and Abraham wakes up on the floor of a grocery store from earlier. He looks around, and Ellen and the kids are gone, and there's a note that says, "Don't try to find us," and that was definitely very crazy. Now, they probably went away because they were scared of him, and he's very upset about this because he really wanted to protect them. But I think that they were pretty much scared by him because of the blood on his hands, because they saw that he killed someone, and they obviously were kind of freaked out by him. So that's why they basically turned their back on him. So that was definitely very sad. I really felt bad for Abraham in that, and that was just definitely very, very sad. So Abraham and his group are now a ways down the road in the fire truck, and evidently Abraham got the truck running, but it stopped again, and Eugene is reading the H.G. Wells book, The Shape of Things to Come, on the back of the fire truck. And Maggie tells Eugene that she knows why he has the haircut. And Eugene says that it's because he likes it, but Maggie goes into a story about how it lets everyone know he's not like everyone else. And Maggie says a lot of people in this position would have given up, which is true if you think about it, because the thing about Eugene is that he isn't like everyone else. He's not like them in the sense that he's a tough guy. He's not, like Abraham. He's not tough like Abraham. He doesn't have the skills of, he's a smart scientist, and that's all he is. So I thought that was definitely very good what Maggie said, and I really enjoyed that. So Glenn smells something, and they look ahead down the road where they spy a horde of walkers. Glenn tells everyone they have to turn around and head back, and Abraham says that he's not giving up the ship. Abraham says that they can get through that, they aren't going around or back, and Rosita tells Abraham, no, that the others are right, and Abraham grabs Eugene, starts walking back to the fire truck. Eugene's screaming, and then Eugene reveals to them a huge twist. I thought this was just an amazing twist. He reveals that he's not a scientist. And this was just crazy what happened here. And basically, he lied. He says he lied and that he's not a scientist and that he doesn't know how to stop it. So naturally, everyone's completely shocked, me as included. I'm like, what? I mean, Eugene said he was a scientist and he knew about this cure. It does make sense, though, because, like, it kind of makes sense. So everyone's standing around staring at Eugene. They're all in complete shock of what's going on. And Rosita insisting that Eugene is a scientist. And Eugene says that he just knows things and knows that he's smarter than most people. He says that he just wanted to get to DC because he believes that local holds the strongest possibility for survival. He just wanted to trick some people into taking him there. And that's basically why he wanted to get there. Because he wanted to be, he wanted to survive and he wanted to get there. So Rosita says that people died trying to get him to DC, and Eugene says that is the reality of getting to DC came closer. They tried to slow the path. Eugene says he also lied about T. Brooks Ellis liking his hair. Abraham gets up, beats the shit out of him, like he is pissed at what he did. And, like, that was definitely very crazy. He's naturally very pissed at him because he thought that Eugene was their scientist, and that seemed to be the thing here, that Eugene basically was their scientist, the one that was the smart one here. He falls face flat into the pavement, and basically, Abraham goes at Eugene again. Rosita steps in front of him, puts her hand on her gun, and Maggie rolls Eugene over, but he's out cold, and Abraham walks away, falls to his knees on the roadway, and that was just absolutely crazy what happened here. And that I thought that was basically going to be in the episode, but no, it's not, because we see in a flashback that basically we actually find out why Eugene was so important to Abraham, and we see that Abraham's looking at the bodies of Ellen and the kids, and he was about to commit suicide. Like, he was basically on the verge of suicide there. He was gonna kill himself, and he hears someone screaming for help, and it's Eugene being chased by 3 walkers. He kills the 3 walkers and starts to walk away. He calls out for him to stop, saying that he can't leave, and Abraham asks why, and Eugene says he has a very important mission, and basically that's how Eugene joined his group, and I thought that was a great way to end the episode. I definitely really enjoyed that, and I thought that was just overall very, very good. So let's talk a little bit about this episode. First of all, the one thing I definitely do want to say here is that I love this episode pretty much. I thought it was a really great episode because of Abraham. We now know a lot more about Abraham. We know why he is the way he is. We know that Abraham actually isn't really a good leader. I mean, if you want to talk about good leaders, Rick really is the good leader here. Like, it's not that Abraham's not a good leader. It's that if we were talking about really good leaders here, Rick is the one that comes to mind. You know, definitely Rick is the stronger leader, in my opinion. I just think he's a better leader overall. As far as Eugene goes, I don't know if Eugene is dead. I don't know if he's coming back. We'll have to see what happens there, definitely. Well, that's definitely going to be very interesting to see what happens. You know, if Eugene does come back, is Abraham going to kick him out of the group? What's going to happen there? Obviously, they're very upset with him because they thought he was a scientist. Now he's not. Do you sympathize with Eugene? I mean, it kind of does make sense. He was different from everyone. He was just trying to find shelter for himself. But the thing is, everyone in this show is extremely selfless. They're doing things for other people. They're doing this to save other people. They're doing this for their group. You know, that's why they're doing this. They're doing this so they can find shelter, not so the individual person can find shelter. No, they were doing this to help them, you know, they were doing this to help everyone as a group. And Eugene was just there to get himself safety. And it kind of makes sense why. But my question is, do you guys sympathize with him? I kind of sympathize with him. I don't really know. I feel like I kind of understand why he did what he did, but in the long run, it's still, I mean, I don't know. Do you guys sympathize with him? Also, do you think, I thought it was very interesting that Glenn and Maggie talked about Daryl and Carol. Do you think that they know that the rest of them stay at the church? Do you think they know where they're going? I don't know. Eventually, they're all going to meet up again, so we'll have to see what happens there, definitely. Abraham, I'm definitely very interested in seeing more about Abraham. I thought that was really good we found out more about him. I thought that was definitely very well done, in my opinion, and I really enjoyed that. Where are they? Are they going to get to Washington? I don't know if they're going to get to Washington now, because they don't know how to stop this fire truck. He doesn't know what he's, Eugene doesn't know what he's doing. They know he's not a scientist now. So I really don't know if they're going to get to Washington or not after what just happened to them. I honestly don't know if they are. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens there, honestly, because I don't know if they're going to get to Washington. I want them to. I want them to get to Washington because I care about all of them, but I don't know if they're going to. Next week, it looks like we're going to focus on Daryl and Carol. Now, I will say one thing about this episode. There were a few parts in this episode that did drag on a little bit. The first, I'd say, few minutes of this episode, I wasn't that into. There were some things I was not really into as much as I wanted to be. And my only thing with The Walking Dead is I'm fine when they do individual episodes, but when they do this group or this group or this group, it can get a little boring and not as interesting as it should be. And I'm fine that they're doing that, but I just hope this does not become Season 4, because Season 4 was okay. I like that they focused on individual groups, but it did get a little tiresome after a while, especially alone and still in episodes like that. It got a little tiresome after that. and I hope they don't do that with this season. I'm thinking they know what they're doing this season. I do trust them, but I don't really know. I guess we'll just have to see. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I personally really enjoyed this episode. I thought it was definitely a very good episode. Not the best episode of the season. Best episode of the season, still episode 3. This was probably the 3rd best episode of the season, but I still really, really enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of Homeland. So I'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.